Let me tell you about a letter. It came in a plain white envelope, the kind you almost throw out with the junk mail. Inside was one page. A homeowner down in a storm-heavy stretch of the Gulf Coast had filed a wind claim after a bad blow came through. Roof gone over the garage end, water in 2 bedrooms, drywall sagging like a wet paper bag. He figured it was simple. Wind is covered. He paid for wind his whole life. He waited on the check. The letter told him the claim was denied, not reduced, denied. And the reason printed on that page was 4 words long, resulting from inadequate maintenance. He read it 3 times. He called the company. He got the runaround you always get. And eventually, that file landed on a desk a lot like the one I sat behind for almost 30 years. My job back then was to figure out where a claim like that died. Not whether the wind was real. The wind was real. The question was always narrower and colder than that. Where exactly did this claim go wrong, and was it wrong before the storm ever showed up? So that is what we are going to do today. We are going to take that denial and we are going to work backward, step by step, until we find the exact moment it was lost. Because here is the part that still bothers me after all these years. It was not lost the day of the storm. It was lost months earlier, on an ordinary afternoon, over something that would have cost this man almost nothing to fix. And he never knew it mattered. I am going to show you the mistake, and I am going to show you how to make sure that letter never shows up in your mailbox. Let's start at the end and walk it back. The denial said the damage resulted from inadequate maintenance. Now, on the surface, that sounds like nonsense. A storm came through, the roof came off. How is that maintenance? But that phrase is doing a very specific job, and to understand it, you have to understand what the adjuster saw when he stood in that driveway. Because he was not really looking at the roof first. He was looking at the garage door. I'll be honest with you, for most of my career, the garage door was the first thing I looked at on a wind file, and most homeowners had no idea it was even part of the conversation. They thought the claim was about the roof. The roof was just the last thing to break. The first thing to break, 9 times out of 10, was the door. Here is why, and I want you to really sit with this, because it changes how you see your own house. Your garage door is the single biggest opening in your entire home. Think about it. A 2-car door is around 16 feet wide. There is no wall there. There is no framing across that span. There is a thin panel held in place by a couple of tracks and some rollers, and that is it. Everywhere else, your house is built to push back against the wind. Solid walls, studs, sheathing. But that one big opening is held together by hardware you probably have not looked at since you moved in. The folks who study this, the building science people and the safety researchers, they have been saying it for decades. The Federal Alliance for Safe Homes, which is a non-profit that does this kind of post-storm work, puts it about as plainly as you can. After looking at the wreckage from hurricanes and tornadoes and severe thunderstorms going back years, they found that more than 90% of the serious wind damage to a house begins at the garage door. It separates from its mounting, or it caves in, or it gets punched through by flying debris. And once that happens, everything else is just a chain reaction. Let me explain that chain reaction, because this is the whole ballgame. When the wind pushes on a closed, solid house, it mostly flows around it. The house stays sealed. But the second that garage door fails, the wind does not flow around your house anymore. It flows into it. And now you have got tremendous pressure building up inside, pushing out. At the same time, the wind outside is pulling up and out on your roof and your walls. Pushing from the inside, pulling from the outside all at once. The building scientists have a phrase for it. They call it internal pressurization. I always described it to homeowners a different way. It is like overinflating a balloon from the inside while somebody is also pulling on the skin from the outside. Something has to give, and the something is usually your roof. It lifts. The connections that hold it to the walls let go. And then the walls themselves have nothing bracing them at the top, so they go too. That whole sequence can take a few seconds. And it all started at a door that, in a lot of these cases, could have been held shut for a couple $100. There is good research behind this, not just opinion. A study done back in 2018 out of the University of Illinois, working alongside the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, looked at homes hit by tornadoes and a hurricane. And the finding was about as clean as research ever gets. The homes where the garage door stayed intact mostly kept their roofs. The homes where the door failed were the ones with the torn-up roof structures. The door was the difference. Same storm, same street sometimes, different door, different outcome. So now go back to that adjuster standing in the driveway. He sees a garage with a blown-in door and a missing roof over it. And the first question in his mind is not, was there wind? It is, why did this door fail? Because the answer to that question decides who pays. Quick thing before I show you what to do about it. If you own a home, this is the stuff I wish somebody had handed me 30 years ago instead of letting me find out the hard way from the wrong side of the desk. Hit subscribe and I'll walk you through one of these every week. The mistakes I watched cost people the most. Alright, here is the fix, and here is where this particular claim actually died. When that adjuster looked at the failed door, he was looking for a story. Adjusters are storytellers, whether they admit it or not. We build a narrative about how the loss happened, and that narrative decides whether you get a check. And there are really only two stories a failed garage door can tell. Story 1. A strong, properly maintained door, rated for the wind in your area, got hit by a genuinely violent storm or a piece of flying debris, and failed because the forces were just beyond what anything could take. That is a wind story. That is a covered story. That gets paid. Story 2. A tired old door. Rollers worn down to nothing. Track bolts loose and rattling for years. Rust eating through the panels. Maybe it was already coming off its track and the homeowner had been wrestling it for months. And then a storm came, not even a record breaker, and that door gave out at the weakest point because it was already half failed before the first gust. That is a maintenance story. And maintenance is excluded in just about every policy written. Here is the brutal part. The same hole in the wall can tell either story. The wind does not care. What decides which story gets told is the condition of the door before the storm and whether anybody can prove it. This is the part nobody warns you about. Every homeowner policy I ever worked under had an exclusion for wear and tear, for lack of maintenance, for neglect. It is not hidden, it is right there in the policy. And it exists for a reason that, to be fair, is not entirely unreasonable. Insurers cannot be in the business of replacing things that simply wore out. If your door was rusting and rattling for 10 years, that is not a sudden accidental loss. That is just time. But here is where it gets expensive, and here is where they count on you. When that door fails and takes the roof with it, the insurer has every incentive to tell story 2, to recharacterize a storm loss as a maintenance loss, to look at that old door and say, this did not fail because of wind, it failed because you let it rot, and everything downstream of that. The roof, the water, the bedrooms, all of it flows from your neglect, not our covered peril. Denied, and the homeowner, standing there with a real storm and real wind on the weather record, has almost no way to fight back, because he has no proof of what that door looked like the day before the storm. He has got a pile of wreckage and a memory. The insurer has got an exclusion and a forensic report. You see who wins that one. That is the mistake, not the storm. The mistake was never documenting the door, and in a lot of cases, never maintaining it in the first place. The man who got that denial letter had a door that had been struggling for years. He knew it stuck. He knew it rattled. He had been meaning to get to it, and none of that was written down anywhere, so when the adjuster told story 2, there was nobody to tell story 1. Now let me be fair, because I always try to be straight with you even when it does not help my side of the argument. Sometimes the insurer is right. Sometimes that door really was the problem, and the wind just finished a job that neglect started. I saw plenty of files where the homeowner was genuinely trying to get paid for a decade of ignoring their own house. That happens, which is exactly why your proof has to be airtight, because the honest homeowner with the well-kept door and the unlucky storm gets lumped in with those folks unless he can prove he is different. The exclusion does not sort the honest from the careless. Only your documentation does that. And if you have ever had the feeling that the people you pay to protect you are quietly hoping you slip up, hoping you never took the photo and never read the policy, I am not going to tell you you are imagining it. The whole process runs on the bet that you will show up to the worst day of your life with nothing in your hand. So let us make sure you show up with something. Here is what to do, and most of it is free or close to it. First, go out to your garage today and find the label on your door. It is usually on the inside of one of the panels. A wind-rated door, a door actually built to take a storm, will have a label listing the manufacturer and a design pressure rating, sometimes a product approval number. If you live in Florida or along the Texas coast, that rating is part of your building code, and in the high-risk zones, the door is supposed to carry a specific approval. If you find that label, photograph it. That photograph is gold. That is the thing that lets you tell story 1. And if you go out there and there is no label at all, no rating, nothing, then I want you to assume your door is not rated for serious wind, and treat it as the weak point it probably is. That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to plan. Second, do the 15-minute maintenance pass and document it. Take a socket wrench and snug up the bolts on the tracks and the brackets and the hinges. Not gorilla tight, just firm. Years of the door going up and down shakes those loose. Look at your rollers. Look at the tracks for rust and bends. Give the moving parts a shot of silicone or white lithium spray, never the all-purpose stuff, and never grease in the tracks. And here is the one safety rule I will not bend on. Do not touch the springs or the cables. They are under enormous tension and they will put you in the hospital or worse. That is a professional job, and a tune-up from a garage door company usually runs somewhere between $75 and $250. Cheap insurance against an expensive denial. While you are doing all that, take pictures. Dated pictures. The door closed, the door open, the rollers, the tracks, the label. Keep them in a folder with any receipt from a tune-up. That folder is the single best defense you have against a wear and tear denial. When the insurer tries to tell story 2, you hand them story 1, with dates on it. I cannot tell you how many claims I watched turn on whether that folder existed. Third, if your door is not rated and you are in real wind country, you have got 2 roads. The cheaper road is a bracing kit. A proper vertical brace, the kind that anchors to your floor and up to the header, runs somewhere in the range of $150 to $800 depending on the system. The better road, if your budget allows, is a wind-rated or impact-rated replacement door, which for a 2-car opening commonly lands somewhere around $1,500 to $5,000 installed. That is real money, I know, but weigh it against what is on the other side of that door failing. And let me kill one myth right now, because it gets people hurt and it gets claims denied. Parking your car against the garage door does not brace it. I know it feels like it should. It does not. Hurricane wind will shove a car like it is a shopping cart, and worse, a lot of the force on your door is not pushing in, it is suction. Your car does nothing against suction. I have seen the photos. 2 cars in the garage, door blown clean in, roof gone. The car is not a plan. A real brace or a real door is a plan. So here is where it gets expensive if you skip all this, and I want to put real numbers on it so it lands. Say a storm comes. Your unrated, unmaintained door fails. The roof over the garage goes. You file. Now, even in the best case, where the insurer plays it straight and calls it wind, you are still walking into a hurricane deductible. And those are not the flat $500 or $1,000 you might be used to. They are a percentage of your home's insured value, often somewhere between 1 and 5%. On a $300,000 home, a 2% deductible is $6,000 out of your pocket before the company pays a cent. And if your roof is old, you may find out it is only insured at actual cash value, which means they knock off years of depreciation before they cut the check. So the payout shrinks from 2 directions at once. That is the best case. The worst case is that letter, resulting from inadequate maintenance. Denied. And now the whole loss, which could easily run into the tens of thousands once you count the roof and the water damage and the interior, that whole thing is yours. All of it potentially turning on a door you could have braced for a few $100s and documented for free. Now I want to tell you about a different outcome, because I do not want you to think this always ends in a denial letter. There was another file, a woman I will call Marie, and her story is the one I think about when people ask me if any of this prep actually matters. Same kind of storm, same kind of neighborhood. Her garage door took a beating and it did fail, and she had roof damage behind it. By the wreckage alone, her claim looked identical to the man with the denial letter. Same hole, same water, same sad pile of drywall. But Marie had a folder. She had photographs of her door from the spring, before the season, clearly showing a maintained door in good shape. She had a receipt from a tune-up, and she had a photo of the rating label. When her file came across the desk, the adjuster could not tell story 2. He could not say the door was neglected because here was dated proof it was not. The only story the evidence supported was the true one: a sound door, a violent storm, a covered loss. Marie got paid. The other fellow did not. Same damage. The difference was a folder that cost her nothing but a few minutes in the spring. That is the whole thing right there. The damage does not decide your claim. The proof does, the timing does. The condition of that door before the wind ever arrives does. And every bit of that is in your hands today, while the sky is clear. So if you have ever had a claim denied and you never really understood why, tell me what happened down in the comments. I read them, everyone, and your story might be the next video because somebody else out there is about to make the same mistake, and your story might be the thing that stops them. But before you do anything else, go look at your garage door, find the label, or find out there is not one. Snug the bolts, take the photos, start the folder. That is the one I wanted you to have. Do it before you need it, because the day you need it is the day it is too late to start. I'll see you on the next one.